Rising up. This is episode 3. The year was 1982. I'm Aaron Thomas in Jeff Hans's basement here once again. Jeff, thanks for joining me.
We're always in the basement. We're always in the basement.
And the year was 1982, and Sly Stallone was the king of Hollywood.
Was he the king?
I think he was.
Was he considered the king?
I think he was.
At that time?
I think I was probably the only one. I'm probably the only one who thinks that, but I think he was. In my eyes,
I think he had competition.
All right, episode 2. The year was... We're doing an 80s episode. The year was 1982, and just like episode 1 and 2, we're going to start things with the rundown. The rundown is IMDb's top 20 highest grossing films at the box office. Number 1 in 1982. Jeff, what do you think it was?
Just looking at the list of films.
It's a weird year.
Is it a weird year?
It's a weird year. I'll give you that.
Well, then I'll go with Rocky.
Okay.
Rocky 3.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. It's a weird year in the top 20. The number 1, I don't think is too weird. Number 1 is E.T.
Really?
Yeah. E.T., $435 million.
Maybe because I wasn't alive at the time, you know?
Yeah.
I don't feel that impact, but E.T.?
Yep. That was my thought, too. We'll get into E.T. later.
Okay.
All right. Number 2 at the box office that year, Tootsie, $177 million.
Really?
Yeah.
Tootsie?
Yeah. It's one of those years. I think you think that, and we think that.
Okay, I need to ask, what drew you to picking 1982? Because when you told me 1982, I was kind of like, 1982?
Well, first off, I picked 1982 because when I was putting together ideas for episodes and ideas for years, one of the first things I did was type in most influential years in film, and I came across a list that somebody had put together, and 1982 was on there. So I just jotted it down, like, okay, somebody thinks this is interesting, maybe we can talk about it. And then when I was putting together a list of episodes that we should do, I just clicked on 1982 and I saw the list of movies, and I was like, wow, this is actually a really good year. I mean, for me at least.
I didn't get that feeling.
All right, this is gonna be interesting. That's what makes this. That's what is going to make this show fun, because you're going to be able to see what's important to you and what's important to me has so much to do with when you're introduced to this stuff, when you see this stuff. A lot of these movies that came out in this year, probably because of the age of my dad, were stuff that my dad was like, as soon as I was of age to see it, my dad was like, you got to see this.
See, that's one thing that you've got over me, is that I didn't really start watching. My family watched films, don't get me wrong, but my dad is one of those people that if he sees a film, he never has to see it again unless it's Bond.
Okay.
Then my mom she was more into music than she was into movies. So our family did go and see movies and all of that, but I didn't really get my movication until I started dating my now wife.
That makes a lot of sense. Because, you know, that it does have a huge impact on you, what you're introduced to in that age. And my dad and I, strained relationship growing up, so my dad always looked for things for us to bond over, and for a while it was sports, and then I kind of got out of sports a little bit, and then once my dad saw me drifting into movies, he was like, this is great, because my dad is a huge movie buff, so he just took that as an opportunity to fill my head with all his theories on film.
When I was young, I didn't really have that, so it kind of, I mean, meeting Rob as well, because I met Rob around the same time that I met my wife, and Rob has been a huge influence on me as far as movies, so I guess those are my two, you know?
That's funny, because I was probably the Rob for a lot of other guys then, because I remember in high school all the time, like, you've never seen this? Sit down and watch this movie. It's the best, you know? Like, I remember...
I'm that guy now.
Yeah. I remember, this is a sidebar, we'll do that a lot, watching The Truman Show at my house with a bunch of buddies, and I was talking about the movie, and they're like, Jim Carrey sucks. He's not even funny. And I put this movie on. I'm like, sit down, watch this movie. Full disclosure, there was a lot of weed involved, so that certainly helped. But by the end of the movie, there's a room full of like 5 dudes all just cheering for Jim Carrey.
Change your mind, sir.
Like, all of us are like, yes,
eat crow.
All right, so number 2 at the box office, Tootsie, 177 million. Number 3 at the box office in 1982, An Officer and a Gentleman, 129 million. I've never seen this.
Well, I haven't seen it, but it is one that is often talked about in drama movie circles. It's an influential film as far as I know.
Number 4 at the box office, 125 million, Rocky 3.
Rocky 3. See, I honestly thought that would be number 1, just given the track record of Rocky.
Yeah, I think I thought it would be a little higher. I mean, number 4 is really high, but I did think it would be closer to 1 or 2. Number 5 at the box office that year, 78 million. Man, what a drop off from 4 to 5. You have Rocky 3, 125, and then number 5 is 78 million. That's quite a difference.
Significant.
So number 5 at the box office, 78 million, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. Widely looked at. Yes, that's the most famous part. But just, if you talk to Star Trek fans, and I'm a big Star Trek fan, this is widely considered the greatest Star Trek movie of all time.
I never got into Star Trek.
Really?
So
that's funny.
Yeah, it's strange, right?
Yeah, that is a little strange.
You know what I was thinking about the other day is you and I are in this strange cross section where we enjoy sports and like sci-fi nerdy stuff as well. So it's like I have those friends that are like my friends that only enjoy sports, but I also have my friends that only enjoy sci-fi stuff, and never between shall meet.
Yeah, that is a great point. Those two things rarely ever meet. There's no sci-fi sports movies. You know? Like,
we should do it.
That's actually a great idea. That's a great idea. Number 6 at the box office, 78 million, 48 hours.
48 hours.
One of the best.
Yeah, the first. Yeah,
it's the first.
Yep.
The
another 48 hours didn't come out until like 9 years later or something, right?
Yeah,
it was a lot.
It's another 40. The name of the movie is called Another 48 Hours. And the Safdie brothers, the guys over at
1990, Another 48 Hours came out.
The Safdie brothers, the guys over at A24 bought the rights to the 48 Hours film. They wanted to do a remake, but they realized they're like, we were just going to make 48 Hours again. Like, we can't make that movie again. We just wanted to do that movie again because they love it so much. 48 Hours is one of the best. I'm going to talk about that movie a lot, so just hold on to that. Number 7 at the box office, 76 million, The Poltergeist.
Yes. And that was one of the just a scary damn movie.
Yep, and
makes you want to get rid of your TV.
I asked my mom when I was putting this whole thing together. I said, 1982. What movie? I showed her the list of the movies that came out that year. I was like, what movie stands out to you the most? And she said Poltergeist. She said she saw this movie for the first time with my aunt, who's babysitting her at the time. She said it scared her so much that she slept with my aunt for like the next 3 days because she just didn't want to sleep by herself. I believe that. I think my mom, she said she was like 11 or something at the time.
My wife, I asked her favorite horror movie of this year because, like I said, I felt like it was sparse for me, and she was like Poltergeist.
Really?
Definitely.
Yeah, people really love that movie. Number 8 at the box office that year, 69 million, which is kind of funny. The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas made $69 million. You can't make that shit up.
How fortuitous.
That's a Burt Reynolds, Dolly Parton movie. Number 9, $57 million at the box office, Annie.
Who was the lead, Miss Daddy Warbucks in the remake?
Was it Jamie Foxx?
It was Jamie Foxx. Yep.
I think
Such
so.
a strange. Why did they want to remake that movie at all?
Oh man, my favorite part. I've never seen the remake of the movie. I just like thinking about like some stupid redneck seeing that trailer and being like, "What? They're remaking Annie and she's black.
They're ruining Annie.
That's not my Annie."
It seems like anytime you have
not my Annie.
any character. Oh my God!
Somebody would have said that back then.
It seems like anytime you have that, you've got some dumbass redneck protesting like it matters.
I remember when they had the Ariel thing come out with the new.
Oh yeah,
with the new. What's the name of that movie? Why can't I think of that?
Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid. And somebody I actually went to high school said that on their Instagram. It's a hashtag not my Annie. I'm like, well, hashtag you're unfollowed. You're an idiot. It's a movie.
Dumb.
Number 10 at the box office, 1982, 54 million. The Verdict, Paul Newman.
Paul Newman.
Yes, he did other things than just make salad dressing.
Newman's Own.
Number 11 at the box office, 52 million. Gandhi.
Gandhi. Yeah, I have that one. I have not seen. I have heard tremendous things. I'm a fan of, what is it, Ben Kingsley's?
Yes, he played Gandhi.
Lead. I'm a huge fan of his.
Tremendous actor.
Everything that he's in, so...
Yeah, I'm going to shelf that one because that's a movie that we're going to be talking about a lot moving forward here in this episode. Number 12 at the box office, 1982, 47 million. First Blood, which is the very first Rambo movie.
So that's direct competition with Rocky.
Yep. That's another, we'll talk about that. Number 13 at the box office, 47 million as well. The Toy, which is a really fun Richard Pryor movie if you've never seen it.
Oh, I love Richard Pryor, so yeah, that's one I got to add to my list then.
So Richard Pryor plays this poor man who is literally he is literally bought by a rich kid's parents to be a plaything. For this rich kid.
It sounds like something he would want to do.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of messages in this movie. Super funny. Number 14 at the box office that year, 46 million. Firefox, which is a war movie directed by Clint Eastwood.
No, I don't know it.
Number 15 at the box office, 40 million. The Dark Crystal, aka Nightmare Fuel for Little Aaron.
See, I have never seen this. I know a lot about it, and I know about the fandom that follows it and the cult status that the movie has to this day, but I don't think I want to watch it.
No, I don't either. Why somebody, when I was a kid, thought that was a good idea to let me watch that movie. That freaked me out as a kid. Number 16 at the box office, 39 million. Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Earl Jones. I love it.
Okay.
Number 17, The Sword and the Sorcerer, 39 million.
That was animated, right?
I don't think this is the animated one. I think this is a live action adaptation. All right, no problem. As Jeff looks that up, Sword and the Sorcerer, 39 million. That was number 17. Number 18 at the box office in 1982 was another Burt Reynolds movie, Best Friends, 36 million. So that's two movies in the top 20 for Burt Reynolds. He joins Stallone as the other man with two movies this year.
Man, Hollywood.
I know.
Back in the 80s, just pumping them out like that.
And two guys that were, just legends at that time who kind of went on to, we just look at Burt Reynolds and we look at Sylvester Stallone differently than they did in 1982 when Burt Reynolds is passed on. So Best Friends is number 18. Number 19 at the box office, Friday the 13th, Part 3, 36 million.
That high in the... Well, I am actually never... I'm not going to say that I'm surprised about that because 80s horror sequels did extremely well because... It was that, and then Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, came out the same year, and I would imagine that they're
horror is going to be a trend for this year. It's one of those things that we're going to talk about a lot here. Number 20 at the box office, Tron, 33 million.
Which was a convention-breaking movie and one of the earliest adapters of just weird digital imagery stuff.
One of those movies that I was actually really surprised to see that in the top 20. I thought that would not make the top 20.
Like a cult status movie afterwards.
Exactly. I thought that would be a cult status hero or a cult movie. It's interesting. We just went through 1 through 20, and guess what's not in there?
What?
Blade Runner.
Oh, it was commercially not successful when it came out.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I did not know that.
It was panned by critics. People hated it. They thought it was dry. They didn't get it. They didn't get the ending.
It is right on the edge. It was number 21. It made 32 million. So it was real close, but I was sure that was going to be in the top 10. One of my favorite movies of all time.
For it to get beat out by a Jason movie.
It is kind of crazy. Well, that's the rundown for 1982. Highest grossing movie, E.T., 435 million.
Wow.
And number 20 is Tron, 33 million. So
wow.
That's the rundown for 1982. Let's get into the fun stuff. MVP.
MVP, baby.
It's a tough one for MVP. It's a tough one. So I have Richard Attenborough or Sly Stallone. Richard Attenborough won 2 Oscars for Gandhi. He won Best Picture and Best Director.
Wow.
And Sly Stallone, I put him in the MVP because he had Rocky. Yes, I do.
Love Rocky.
Because I do. It's totally biased. I love Rocky 3. I believe Rocky 3 is the apex of the Rocky series. But not only does he have Rocky 3, which is the apex of the Rocky series, he has First Blood come out that year too. So he's got the apex of one series, and then he's got the first movie of another series that he got 20 years off of. So this is a great year for Stallone. He made a lot of money.
You're gonna be disappointed in me, but I don't know if I've seen every Rocky.
Really?
I don't know that I have.
Well, there's some you can just miss right away.
I know that I remember pieces from my childhood because in the early to mid 90s they played them on TV all the time. But I can't tell you plot lines. Like I know like stuff from what I've seen, but I can't. I don't know. I don't even know if I've seen this.
Yeah, just 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the only ones you got to watch. Okay. Yeah, Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa. They never even existed.
I saw Creed.
It's the best. I love Creed.
Creed is pretty awesome, but I'm like, I wish I had the historical context to influence the feelings that I would have from that movie.
Certainly would have helped. Do you have an MVP for 1982?
So in the context of everything that was going on around this year, because I didn't have a clear-cut winner, I said Harrison Ford. And let me put it in context for you. In 1980, he did The Empire Strikes Back. 81, Raiders of the Lost Ark. 82, Blade Runner. 83, Return of the Jedi. 84, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Now, you cannot tell me that while he was doing Blade Runner, he was not doing something else for all of those other films.
Yep. He was also probably in negotiation to get all the clear and present danger, and he did so. That was just But his IMDb page is incredible.
Those 5 films, I'm sure, were what completely solidified him as one of the best actors working in Hollywood and the highest paid actors working in Hollywood.
One of my all-time favorite stories, Harrison Ford. He's told the story himself. He says, no disrespect towards Star Wars. I love Star Wars. That first Star Wars, A New Hope, was a great movie. But he said when that movie came out and it was so commercially successful, he said the first thing I thought was, now I can really actually work, and like you see the work that he did.
It's true.
He backed it up. He was incredible. I don't think you can. That's not a bad choice at all.
And knowing what Blade Runner was and how it was in the same wheelhouse as far as sci-fi and like fantasy-esque things. It was a strange get for him. I felt like in the midst of 2 Jedi movies and 2.
You just named
Indiana
4
Jones
or 5
movies.
Blockbusters, then he's got Blade Runner, which is almost like an art house movie when you think about it.
Yes.
Awesome movie though. Awesome. That's a really good choice, particularly when you put it into context like that. Some of my honorable mentions for MVP: Jessica Lange. Jessica Lange in 1982 became the first performer in 4 decades to receive nominations in both acting categories. She got a nomination for Best Actress in Frances and a Best Supporting Actress in Tootsie, and she took home that award that year. So
Tootsie.
An incredible year for Jessica Lange.
Number 2 movie of the year, Tootsie.
Yep. Gandhi, in general, really could have won the MVP. 11 nominations for Gandhi at the Oscars that year. 8 wins.
Well, what was it really competing with? I mean...
Oh, at the Oscars, that was that year's Oscar bait movie. That was that year's, Clean Sweep. That was that year's Slumdog Millionaire, or another MVP that deserves mention or honorable mention, Louis Gossett Jr., first African American to win Best Supporting Actor for An Officer and a Gentleman.
What that is a great historical context to put in for 1982.
It really
is.
is.
That is a great piece.
And it was a couple more years after that until a black man won Best Actor. It's another honorable mention for MVP. Steven Spielberg needs to be brought up since he had E.T. and he had a lot of success before that, but that got him the nomination for Best Director, and kind of like he had a lot of success before that. Jaws was at the time the biggest summer box office movie ever. But E.T., I think, was the one where he's like, I'm here, I'm staying, and I ain't going anywhere.
Well, we'll get to Spielberg in a minute because I got stuff for Spielberg.
All right, okay, that's a great tease there. I got two more honorable mentions. Ben Kingsley, he played Gandhi in that movie. He won the Oscar, and Dustin Hoffman's performance in Tootsie is really, really good. I thought he deserved an honorable mention as well. One of his better performances.
So that was all for MVP, right?
Yeah, those were my honorable mentions. And did you so you already said your MVP was Harrison Ford. All right, so we'll move on to Rookie of the Year. This was, I think this is going to be a really tough category moving forward, but this is a stacked year for Rookie of the Year. It was incredible. Do you want to start?
Maybe I was looking at it at a weird angle, because it seems like you're amped up about this year, and I wasn't feeling it, but I went with Ridley Scott. He had done Alien the year before, and then doing this film, it felt like it was he had the foresight to know that this film was going to be great, even if critics didn't love it initially. And it just, to take a risk out of doing something like Alien, which was commercially successful and people actually loved that movie.
Yeah.
To go into doing something like you said, it seems like it's an art house film, and to take that risk and all of the stuff that he did with it. I mean, he's not a rookie by any means, but I feel like if you take on something like that, you must feel like you're like, this is the first time.
Yeah, no, that's, as they would say in basketball, that's a heat check. He's pulling up from like 20 feet behind the 3-point line. He's like, I'm still draining this, Yeah, like tears in the rain. Yeah, it's just, yes. I love that movie. Rookie of the Year for me, like I said, this is really, really tough. First person I have listed, I couldn't pick one, so I'm just going through all. Rookie of the Year, Meryl Streep won her first Best Actress award this year. She was actually nominated the year before for The French Lieutenant's Woman, but this was her first win, and she's gone on to be nominated 17 times since then. She won
Needless to say, she's pretty good.
Yeah, no, yeah, she was pretty good. And one of those things that will never, she doesn't get enough, not that what does she need credit for this, but Meryl Streep was a babe back in the day. She was super hot.
Oh, yeah.
She was a total babe.
She can get it.
So Meryl Streep, she won her first Best Actress award that year. Kevin Kline had his first film that year, Sophia's Choice. He's
Sophie's Choice. Yeah.
Sophie's Choice. Yeah. Excuse me. He has since won an Oscar and 3 Tonys. So first movie, Kevin Kline in 1982. Eddie Murphy also had his first film that year, 48 Hours.
That was his first feature.
It was his very first movie. Now, granted, he's coming off SNL and coming off being the biggest comedian in the world at this time.
His tour and
Okay, so another Rookie of the Year, Sean Penn, first major role, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
And oftentimes you forget it because he looks so different. I guess the hair.
That's my skull, dude. First major role for Michael Keaton as well, Night Shift.
Wow.
He had been in a movie before then, but this was his first major role.
You're making me more excited about this year as you're talking, because I didn't research it as well as you did.
I knew that once we started talking, I knew this was going to be one of those years that you're like, oh, wow, this is actually pretty good. Damn. And Night Shift, one of those, if you've never seen that movie, you got to check it out. It's an awesome movie. Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler, sign me up. All right, so that's Rookie of the Year, stacked year. Michael Keaton, Eddie Murphy, Kevin Kline, all making their debuts. Director of the Year. This is a tough year for Director of the Year as well, because we already talked about Spielberg with E.T., Richard Attenborough with Gandhi, Sidney Pollack had Tootsie. This is one that needed to be brought up. Tobe Hooper with The Poltergeist.
Yeah.
And Tobe, for those of you who don't know, I didn't know this until I did my research. This guy's like one of the godfathers of horror films. Mm-hmm. He did the 2 original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies as well.
Oh, okay, yeah,
so
yeah.
it wasn't the year after year, but he did Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then the Poltergeist. I mean, those are two of the most famous horror movies of all time.
And creepy ass subject matter too, to be able to take that, bring it to mainstream media, and people actually like it, you know.
Yeah, and it's timeless too. I think a lot of those. I mean, you're gonna learn horror, if that's your genre of choice to make movies in, those are two films that you would watch. Absolutely, and I think Kim would be able to speak to this more because she's more of a horror aficionado. But like, I think horror movies there's a lot of horror movies from that era that probably don't hold up very well, and I feel like those are two of those movies that people still clamor about today.
And get creeped out. Yeah, they're just timeless, creepy movies. Did you have more to add?
No, that was it for director.
For director of the year, I had Spielberg, and while I wasn't entirely huge on E.T., like, I have to rewatch it because I know that there's some really great camera work in it. There's some innovative stuff that's done within that film, but it just I wasn't brought up watching it, so I don't care.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, the internet is pieced together, like pieces of it is like, is Yoda in there? You know, is E.T. a Jedi? You know, it's like all that internet stuff has kind of made that movie even more famous.
Spielberg had done Sugarland Express, and then he did, which was successful. It was extremely successful, but then he did Jaws, which of course is cinema history. If you go on...
Before this, he had Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
That's what I'm saying. He had Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third. Flopped with this comedy called 1941. It was panned by critics, and it's not very good. And then Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then E.T.
I know, that's incredible. Raiders of the Lost Ark was the year before that, and then he's coming into it's insane.
It's crazy to think, like, if you just say the same guy that did Jaws did E.T., you'd probably blow minds. Like, think of future generations, you're really like the guy that did.
And who else can say that?
That's weird. It's extremely strange.
Because, like, Martin Scorsese's not making movies for kids.
No.
Like...
I'm going to do this shark kills everyone on a beach movie, and then I'm going to do an alien kid movie.
You know what?
What?
We talked about Jaws at my house the other day. You know, the funniest things about that movie is that the kid, his parents, are like at least 50 years older than him. Like, they're so old. I mean, it's like, how could you even have that kid? That's one of my favorite. I wish Hollywood would bring that back. Like, you watch Grease now, it's like, that guy's 28. Like, that guy's in his 30s.
That guy had knee surgery last week. Yeah.
Whose class is that guy in?
I'm in high school.
All right, that's, I don't think you could go wrong with that. I mean, Spielberg, best director for 1982. I mean, he was nominated for E.T. I mean, it's a classic movie. I'm holding my E.T. stuff. All right, I got another E.T. thing later. All right, best comedy for 1982. This is really, really tough.
Did we do personal favorite? We didn't do personal favorite.
No, I didn't do personal favorite. You're right. Thank you for stopping me on that. Personal favorite. That's actually ties into my best comedy. My personal favorite movie of the year, I had to pick a tie. 48 Hours and Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
See, you lean comedy.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when I was growing up, I always put the comedies on the DVD player. That was what I went to bed watching, was something like that. So they hold a special place.
Don't get me wrong, I love a good comedy. Yeah.
And Fast Times at Ridgemont, I knew every word to that movie for years. And probably still do.
Comedies to me are almost like music, where you can listen to a record, 1,000 times, and you can also watch a comedy movie 1,000 times and still laugh at different parts. Like, different parts hit you depending on your mood.
And also it's a lot like, that's a great analogy, great comparison use, because it's a lot like listening to an album too, because the first couple times you see a good comedy movie, doesn't matter what it is, any good timeless comedy movie, the first couple times you see it, you have your 3 or 4 parts. Those are your favorite parts. Yeah. And then it's like the 4th or 5th time, you're like, I never noticed he said that.
It's so subtle.
Yeah.
It's such a subtle joke.
I never noticed that. It's like great stuff like that. Like, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 the other day, and it's like, I totally forgot about Drax and the nipples. That shit is so funny. Like, I totally forgot about that. My nipples. So yeah, my best, my personal favorite movies from 1982 is a tie between 48 Hours and Fast Times.
I went with Blade Runner, and out of like everything that I've seen from this year, that would just hands down beat everything that I've seen from 82. Blade Runner, maybe in the context of if I was alive during that time and in the right age bracket, I probably wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah.
But knowing what it's done for cinema and me not caring about air within a movie, where people complain about movies where there's a lot of downtime and a lot of air and a lot of tension building, I prefer that. I prefer movies that take their time instead of just throwing so much stuff at you. And I think this movie does a great job at like pacing those things out and just making you decide what the movie is.
Yeah, I thought you were going to pick Blade Runner because I know that you're a big fan of the Blade Runner sequel too, 2049.
I would say that 2049 is better than the original.
Visually, it's incredible. Literally the only thing that I didn't like about that movie is I wanted to see more Jared Leto. And that's not even like a bad thing. I just wanted to see him more. You know, it's not like, oh, I don't like this movie. It's just, I was like, man, I love Jared Leto. I want to see him more.
I saw that in theaters, and when that scene comes up with him and he's talking to Harrison Ford, I believe, and the light is circling around them. When I saw that, I leaned over to my wife and I was like, that is so fucking cool.
So cool.
She's like, what? And I'm like, the lights. And she's like, uh-huh.
Yeah. You either look at movies like that or you don't. So no, that's a lot of I'm sure if I said that to somebody, they'd do the same thing. It's like, you're either into that or you're not. So Blade Runner is your favorite. We're getting into best comedy now. So obviously I said 48 Hours and Fast Times were my favorite movies. So I'm going to go with those as best comedy. You want to give your best comedy?
Best comedy, Fast Times.
Fast Times? Yeah, I thought that was probably gonna be your
another
choice.
Influential movie. It's just one of those that has solidified its space in
I thought
history.
you would either go with Fast Times or The King of Comedy, which is in my honorable mentions. I thought maybe you were a fan of that movie.
I haven't seen it.
Really?
I haven't seen it.
It's De Niro and Scorsese, and
I know it's good.
Yeah. It's one of those ones you should check it out.
It's funny, as we're doing this, we're going to find out how many movies I actually haven't seen and the wrong movies that I have seen. It's going to be very telling, so I'm interested to see people make commentary on what I say because I'm outing myself in every episode.
Okay, then so if you haven't seen King of Comedy, then I'm pretty sure you probably haven't seen this one either, is Diner.
No.
This is a Barry Levinson film shot here right in Baltimore, and a lot of scenes took place at the Bell Lock Diner, which is no longer a thing.
Yeah, that closed down in the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. It's now a Starbucks.
Yep.
God damn it. But
they're Starbucking us, man.
They do have a cool thing on the side of that building, of that Star Wars, that Starbucks building. They say
the placard.
It says Bell Lock on it because that.
We went to D.C. where the steps that the priest fell down in The Exorcist.
Yep.
We went to those steps. They are steep as hell. So if somebody falls down, you're going to die.
Yeah.
But they have a placard there that you can take pictures by or whatever.
It's cool. I love Diner. For whatever reason, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that I grew up in Baltimore City. My dad lived in the city when I was younger. So my dad always did a good job of making sure that I appreciated Baltimore. And
my dad did too.
Yeah. So Barry Levinson, when I was a kid, like I really liked him because he did stuff in Baltimore. So this was one of those movies that I gravitated towards it. You know, they talk about the Baltimore Colts in it because it's an old school movie, and I really love this movie, Diner. So one of the other honorable mentions for best comedy was Night Shift and Tootsie, but we already talked about those movies.
Tootsie, number 2 for the year.
Best action / thriller of 1982. This was really, really tough. I wrote Blade Runner down, and then I had to cross it off because as much as I love that movie, I love First Blood more. I saw that at the right age, and you know, my dad and I for years running around the house. They drew First Blood. They drew First Blood. You know, it's just I love that movie.
I'm not huge on them, so I went with Blade Runner.
Yeah, I figured it, and I don't think you can go wrong with that. I have it in my honorable mentions. Blade Runner. Another honorable mention I have is Tron, and
Tron was an interesting one.
Yeah,
and I thought about that too, but I don't know. Blade Runner just executed it better.
You know, one of the things I love about Tron is I love seeing Jeff Bridges in anything pre-Lebowski because he's just the dude to me now.
Yeah,
so
to a lot of people. A lot of people.
Exactly. So anytime I see him before, like pre-Lebowski, I'm like, you know, the dude was a handsome motherfucker back in the day.
Yeah, good-looking dude.
He was. And my other honorable mention for best action / thriller was Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan.
God.
Best drama for... do you have some honorable mentions?
Drama. I didn't do mine, right?
No, you said for best action you had...
action. We didn't do drama yet.
Yeah. You had Blade Runner. So, yeah, best drama. This was a really tough one because The Verdict and Sophie's Choice are both tremendous movies, but I just had to go with the one I'd seen more. And it was listed as a drama on IMDb, so I'll take advantage of that. Rocky III.
You are so hardcore leaning.
Yeah, I love Stallone.
A little biased. Oh,
absolutely.
I went with Sophie's Choice.
I don't shy away from it.
I went with Sophie's Choice.
It's a tremendous movie.
It's just anytime you... If you haven't seen the movie, spoilers, if you have to choose between one child or the other living... That is literally the worst choice that you will ever have to make in 10 lifetimes.
The only, obviously, one, because I'm biased and IMDb had it listed as a drama, so I took advantage of that. But Sophie's Choice, I mean, it's a one and done. It doesn't have a lot of rewatchableness to it, but it's like, you do not forget the first time you saw that. Yeah.
It's just gut-wrenching.
God damn, she's so good at her job. The world, we're recording this, almost a week after Kobe Bryant died. Rest in peace to the Black Mamba. Enjoy the other side, his daughter as well. But the world stopped for a couple seconds when he died. The world will stop for hours when Meryl Streep dies. Please don't do that, Meryl. Live forever. Take care of yourself. Eat some vegetables.
As we're going through these lists of great actors, actresses, directors, people that have influenced film, I'm sure we're going to come across people. I mean, like Kubrick, we were talking about in the last episode, no longer with us and completely influential in film. We're going to see that more and more often. And as we get older, I mean, we're coming from a very golden age of cinema that created today's powerhouse players.
Yep.
And they're getting older. And they're going to start passing a lot.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like weeks where you're going to have 3 people on a list of have died this week that you're going to be like, those people have been in more top grossing films than the next 700 people on the list.
I mean, she has done some acting, but she's not looked at as an actor. But I've made the joke for years. I mean, like, the world is literally going to split down the middle when Oprah dies.
Betty White too. Yeah. Betty White too. Like, you throw these names out and you're like, they're still alive. They've been so influential in media and culture in general, and they're still alive. And we're getting older. So are they.
All right, let's get to let's get to the fun stuff again. All right, so we already did. That's why I didn't have personal favorites right away. I have my list out of order. So we already did our personal favorites, and we're going to get into now movies you haven't seen yet that you want to see.
We didn't do animated film of the year.
Oh, yeah, we didn't do animated film of the year.
Well,
okay.
What's interesting when you brought up this year, I started to realize as we're going backward in time, we're going to have less animated films. And I think, like, we're spoiled now because we get so many of them. But 1982... I'm looking for animated films, and I'm like, there's not really a whole lot here, and not really a whole lot that I remember.
No, I actually, when I look, I just type in animated films that came out in 1982, and the first one that came up was Pink Floyd's The Wall. And
you know what? I knew that came out that year, but I hadn't thought about the fact that it was animated.
Yeah.
Just because it's so trippy.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I didn't put that in the animated category in my brain.
And actually, so it came up in a picture, but then when I clicked on the Wikipedia page, it said feature films that came out in 1982. That didn't have that listed.
Yes.
So
it's weird.
Yeah, so you had to go out and find that. Honorable mentions for best animated film: The Last Unicorn and The Secret of Nim.
I had The Secret of Nim being my favorite for the year.
That's the
and
one
it's probably the only one that I've seen out of everything that was.
And that's the one that's most famous.
Yeah.
That is widely. A lot of people have seen that. The Last Unicorn. It's one of those ones I've seen it, and it's one of those ones where when you bring up the website or when you bring up the Wikipedia page and you see all the actors and actresses who are in it, it's like, wow, that's a lot because they didn't do that back then.
Yeah.
Now, like you just get stars to be voice actors. Back then, voice actors were voice actors. They did that. Other actors didn't do that. That was like weird. But then you have Jeff Bridges in this movie, and it's like, wow. And then there's a couple other big actors in that as well.
That's
Last
strange.
Unicorn. It's a cool movie. Huh. It's for a movie that has the word unicorn in it. It's very dark. Okay, so that's animated films, and yeah, you said it best. Really, there's not a lot of animated movies that came out that year.
Slim pickings.
It was and I think that has a lot to do with the fact it's just
the
a lot more
production
expensive.
of animated films. It was just there. If it wasn't a year that Disney was putting something out, you probably weren't getting much as far as animated films.
I mean, it's a lot like getting your car fixed now. Like you're not paying for the parts, you're paying for somebody's man hours.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing in an animated film like that back in the day. You're paying for somebody who's sitting there hand drawing all of that stuff, and it's so much different now. All right, moving right along. Movies you haven't seen but you want to from this year. You want to start? Do you have any?
Gandhi. Gotta see Gandhi with the Ben Kingsley. I have not seen it. I know that it's great, but I've just never sat down and watched it.
I think it's so funny that Ben Kingsley plays Gandhi. Like, he doesn't look anything like an Indian person at all.
Nope.
But he did a great job, won the Oscar. I have seen that movie. It's a one and done. It's good. It's good, though. It's very entertaining. All right, movies I haven't seen yet, but I want to from this year, 1982. Firefox, like I said before, that's a Clint Eastwood movie. He directed and starred in the movie. Really cool, interesting premise. He's got to sneak into Soviet Russia, steal a plane that's like super, powerful, like high-tech plane. Gandhi, I have a star next to this because I've seen it, but I want to see it again because I feel like I may
get something out of it.
Get something out of it differently. And then Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, the Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton movie. I love Burt Reynolds, so I want to see him in anything.
I definitely haven't seen that, but just the idea of them two in a movie together makes me want to.
Exactly. I've said for years that, and he's passed on from us now, so he no longer holds this title, but I said for years that Burt Reynolds was the coolest man alive, just because the stories he probably has.
Just the ladies loved him.
Oh, yeah. Probably a man who was very lucky that he did not rise to fame in the Me Too era, because I'm sure he's got some stories. Here's a category that I'm throwing at you, curveball. I did not tell you this one was coming. This is brand new. This is a little test, a little game. Can you guess that movie?
Oh, boy.
Jeff, I'm going to read you a bio line from a movie on IMDb. I want to see if you can guess it.
Oh, boy.
A British student at a 1960s American high school must prove himself to the leader of a girls' gang.
Can I look at pictures?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
okay.
You can type in movies that came up in 1982.
So give it to me again. Give it to me again.
A British student at a 1960s American high school must prove himself to the leader of a girls' gang.
It's not Grease 2?
It is. Grease 2. Congratulations. Ding, 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 ding.
That was fun. I like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I've never seen it, and I never will. All right. Guilty pleasures from the year. I got one written down, and it's the only one I want to talk about. Conan the Barbarian.
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, man, I love Conan the Barbarian. It's not Arnold Schwarzenegger's first movie. He had actually been in a couple movies before this, and he was also coming off multiple Mr. Olympia victories. Yeah. So he was a big star at this point. But this was...
Metaphorically and physically.
Yes. 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 That's an understatement. God, watch Pumping Iron. This dude was full of himself from the beginning. Oh, God. Conan the Barbarian's kind of the movie that put him on the map in terms of like this guy could potentially be a big time star in Hollywood, because the first Terminator movie comes out a couple years after 1982, I believe in 84. So I think this is one of those ones where Cameron probably saw him and Conan and was like, "That's the Terminator."
It's a big dude.
Yeah, that's the Terminator. And now Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Earl Jones in the movie is just awesome. I love it. Conan the Barbarian. You have a guilty pleasure from 1982?
I do. Creepshow. It was a George A. Romero horror comedy, but Creepshow 2 I like better, but Creepshow is pretty good. It's just like one of those compendium. It's almost
is
like
the guy
Tales
from the Naked Gun movies in that?
I can't remember. I don't think so.
The guy, he's
just, it was like a compendium of little stories, almost like Tales from the Crypt, how you would view that, or Twilight Zone, kind of like, a couple stories. And it was just stupid and funny and had the horror elements and the comedy elements, and it mixed well. And I thought it's one of those movies that are, you either like it or you don't. It's very cult classic-y type of movie. Tom Savini doing makeup and being in it. Stephen King has a cameo in it, and just, Leslie Nelson. That's who you're thinking of. Yeah.
Did do you remember how old you were when you saw this?
In the 90s.
Okay.
Mid 90s. It was like a stupid time. Like, one of those late night, it comes on like movies where you should be in bed, but it's on and you're watching it.
That's so funny. That's you're talking about how I lean towards comedies, and that's kind of why, because those were I was supposed to be asleep, and I was watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
I will give honorable mention. It's not really like I don't watch them all the time, but you did have a Halloween Season of the Witch, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which broke convention where you don't have Michael Myers in it. It's the only one that doesn't have him in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
Season of the Witch is very strange because what Halloween was supposed to be was Halloween stories. Like, that was the thing. But they gave you Michael Myers, and that's what people wanted. So they kind of broke the convention, and they gave you...
Michael Myers was so popular that they were like, we're going
to... so they did the second one, and they were like, but we wanted to do it this way. So Season of the Witch, if you've never seen it and you're not like a big horror person, watch like 1, 2, and 3 Halloween, and you will get a very different feel when you get to Season of the Witch. A lot of people either absolutely love Season of the Witch, or they absolutely hate it.
Really?
And there's a song in it that's very annoying and gets stuck in people's heads because it's like they count down the days to Halloween. So it's like 8 more days till Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. And people either love it or hate it.
Oh, man. That's probably somebody's ringtone still to this day.
Guaranteed. You go to conventions, like horror conventions, and you bring up Season of the Witch, it's like a divisive subject.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. All right. Here's another... random category that I threw in as I was putting this in. There was so many movies here in this. There's a couple movies, not so many, but there's a couple movies in here. It was like, I got to just spit out my hot take on these movies.
Just talk about it.
Here's the hot take segment. If you have any hot takes on the top of your head, feel free to share them. But here are my hot takes.
Cat People, greatest movie of the... No, I'm kidding.
All right, here's my hot takes. I said I was going to talk about it, and here I am talking about it. I hate E.T.
You hate it.
I hate E.T.
Like with a passion.
Oh, man, I never watch. I refuse to watch that movie. When I was a kid, E.T. creeped me out. He looked like cancerous poop. He was skinny and gross.
That's probably why I wasn't drawn to that movie, is because I got the same vibe that you got.
Yeah.
I think unless you were a kid growing up in that time and saw it when it was appropriate for you to see it in theaters, then being older and being in the 90s and...
It's weird.
Like, I think technology was better, so it kind of looks off-putting.
Yeah, it's weird. He looks gross.
Whereas, like, you had Jaws, which you barely ever saw the shark.
Yeah.
And then you've got an alien that's kind of a weird alien that's a puppet that's in your face the whole time. I feel like if he kind of did the same thing that he did with Jaws with E.T., where it's like you barely see him and he's kind of like hidden in a corner somewhere and they're trying to hide him and like keep him, he's over here.
Yeah.
I think it may have been better.
May have been. I think it would have been a little bit difficult, though, because I think one of the things that works with that movie for people is that they humanize the alien so much. So you kind of have to see him to be able to do that.
But I don't want to see him.
No, I don't either. He's gross. He's so gross. I can't stand E.T. And my last hot take, everyone thinks that Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie of all time. Star Trek 3, Search for Spock is my favorite out of the original.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite Star Trek movie, period, but it is with the ones with the original cast, that is my favorite. And my dad is a huge Star Trek fan. Every time we have this conversation, he's like, "You're crazy. Wrath of Khan is the best." I'm like, "No, I love Search for Spock. It's my favorite."
I can't wait to see arguments come forward in form of comments.
Oh yeah,
put Aaron on blast, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, people will be like, "No, you're crazy. Wrath of Khan is the best." But no, I Star Trek Search for Spock is my favorite. Out of the original cast. So those are my hot takes from 1982.
I don't think I have any hot takes. I just thought it was a weird year that you got a Halloween and a Friday the 13th movie, or sequels. Friday the 13th was a 3D. The third one was a 3D movie.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah.
I wonder, in the terms of the technology of 3D technology, I can't imagine that was the first, because we probably would know that if it was the first 3D movie ever.
No.
But like,
I mean, that trend got started in like the 50s and stuff.
Oh, really?
50s and 60s.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Drive-ins were big for 3D movies. Like that was a huge thing at drive-ins.
Really?
But
that makes sense.
But for whatever reason, Hollywood seems to do this thing where ebbs and flows with the 3D stuff.
I remember it was so popular when I was a kid, and then you didn't see it a lot. And
I was
going to
say that
big time,
like early 2000s. I feel like they put a 3D adaptation to pretty much anything.
Spy Kids
the problem with it is there's movies that are filmed to be shown in 3D, and then there's movies that get a 3D adaptation afterwards.
And
anything
so
that's
obvious
afterwards is hot garbage, and you're paying extra for nothing.
It's so obvious when those movies are like that too, because it looks different. It feels
But it was just, I think it was a gimmick to give you the third one in 3D.
All right, so that's hot takes. We're moving on to trends from the year. You have any trends that you noticed here from this year, 1982?
Tons of B-horror movies. I already talked about Season of the Witch Breaking Convention and Friday the 13th being in 3D. And then you've just got a list of movies that didn't do commercially well, but were either sequels or just horror movies. Amityville 2, The Possession, movie called The Beast Within, Forbidden World is one that people talk about often, Basket Case, Slumber Party Massacre.
So I had this here in my final thoughts, but since that's in your trends, I'm just going to go right into it as well. I said this was the year of the horror movie. I think it's a big year for horror. You have Poltergeist, The Thing, Cat People, Slumber Party Massacre, The Entity, Creepshow, Swamp Thing, Forbidden World, Friday the 13th 3, Halloween 3, and Parasite are all in the top 50 most popular movies on IMDb for 1982. And then popular movies, that's a fan vote. So fans have said from this year, that's a lot in the top 50.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
The Thing,
you don't see that now.
And The Thing, people forget about it being this is a remake.
Oh, of The Thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Thing is a remake. So this one may be the one that everyone knows and everyone remembers, but it's actually a remake of earlier made film.
And that's I've actually seen that one, and the set here on that movie is really what makes it. Not in terms of like the set looks cool. Like it's not like Mad Max or anything, but like isolated sets in horror movies, it makes it so much better. It just, they're not going anywhere.
You're stuck. You're with this and it's a John Carpenter film. And John Carpenter is one of the masters of thriller horror genre.
Yeah, really a genius.
And it's a fantastic film. It's one of the ones that there are certain scenes that still make me jump, like just well put together. Bravo.
Yeah, really. So some of my trends from the year that I said this is a sci-fi boom. This was not the beginning of the sci-fi boom. 76 was really the beginning of the sci-fi boom, but this certainly piggybacked on it. You have E.T., Blade Runner, Tron, and Star Trek 2 all came out this year. Hugely successful movies that continued that science fiction boom that started in the late 70s and is still going strong. Science fiction, one of the biggest blockbusters every year. And then breakouts for big stars. Michael Keaton, Night Shift, Eddie Murphy, 48 Hours, Kevin Kline, Sophie's Choice. I mean, these are guys who went on to have incredible success in this field for years to come, and they all got their start this year in 1982.
It's hilarious to look at the cover art for 48 Hours and see Nick Nolte top billing and Eddie Murphy second billed, because when you think Eddie Murphy now, it's like, why would he never be top bill for any movie that he's in?
Oh man, Nick. I no disrespect towards Nick Nolte, but Eddie Murphy is. When you look at guys who are the best comedians now, who I would consider the best comedians now, every single one of them names Eddie Murphy as their favorite comedian. So like. That says it all.
or at least on the top 3 list.
Yeah, it's like
he's in conversation constantly.
We were talking about Kobe Bryant earlier, and it's like I became a Kobe Bryant fan later on in life. I grew up a Celtics fan. I didn't like Kobe Bryant. He was on the other team. So, but as I got older, and you hear about the other players talk about Kobe, it's like, wow, they really respect him, and that's the way comedians look at Eddie Murphy. Like they put him on the pedestal. That tells you. If they think he's the best, he probably is.
And that's a big thing, is garnering the respect of your peers. I mean, I think that's almost more important to certain artists in any category.
I know it's important to me. Like someone who wants to be in that business, in that entertainment business, that's important to me. So final thoughts on the year? You have any final thoughts on 1982?
I felt like it was a year of cult classic movies. I feel like there were quite a few movies that may not have been exactly commercially successful, or the critics liked within the time frame of that year, but have gone on to a cult level status where you find these pockets of groups of people that will talk about these movies like they are the best movie that they've ever seen.
And I think that's where the horror comes in, because those movies that I listed, Poltergeist, The Thing, those I think were really popular movies at that time, but I think a lot of those other movies probably became cult classics later on. Like you said, Hollywood, one more time, Halloween 3, man.
Yeah, Season of the Witch is just, it's one of those that came out. It was expected that you were getting the same thing that you'd gotten in the previous 2. People either liked it or they didn't like it, and it's still continued to this day, the argument. So,
all right. So yeah, that used to final thoughts. Into my final thoughts. I've already shared one of them. Big year for horror, the year of the horror.
And E.T. sucks.
Yeah, and but my big final thought, and this is going to come as no surprise to Jeff and everyone listening. It was the year of Stallone. Rocky 3, like I said, it's the apex of the Rocky saga, and then he has First Blood, which is the very first Rambo movie. So he's got the apex of one franchise and the beginning of another. And not only that, this was my favorite little piece of information from this whole podcast. The main song from Rocky 3 is Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger was so popular. Rocky 3 was so popular that Eye of the Tiger was the number 2 song on the Billboard Top 100 that year. That's how popular Rocky 3 was, that the main song from it was the number 2 song for the whole year. You want to know what number 1 was, though?
What?
Let's get physical, physical. Come on, let your body do. Whatever Olivia Newton-John says. The 80s were lawless.
I believe that. Because Tootsie was the number 2 grossing movie for that year.
The 80s were lawless, and there's just no better way to end this than that, Thank you so much for joining us. 1982, it's our first 80s episode.
Welcome
to
the 80s.
It was a lot of fun. Let's get physical.
Or not. E.T. sucks a lot.